Hi, I'm Mike Suarez, and I serve on Tampa City Council, and you're watching Tampa Bay Community Network.
Hi, I'm Bill Hodges, and this is Spotlight on Government. And we have with us today Mike Suarez. Mike, City Commission, City of Tampa.
Yes, sir.
And you're coming into the stretch on your first term now. We had you on when you first started.
Yeah.
And now you're going almost to the end of that. Another year?
No, less than that. We have until March 3rd is the election for my re-election.
And will you announce your re-electing?
I have already announced,
Oh,
so I'm okay.
I missed that opportunity.
There's no, I'm sorry, no scoop here. I apologize, but I'm already running for re-election. So.
Darn, I'm going to talk to my producer about that. Mike, it is wonderful to have you back on the program. Let's go back over the time that you've been in office,
Sure.
the things that when you came into office you thought you might see versus what you have seen. Is there a big difference?
Absolutely. When we first started to run for election and then eventually won, myself and all the other council members and the mayor, we really had to tackle homelessness. That was the first issue that we needed to deal with. We came up with a compromise from council and able to try and limit what panhandlers could do over the course of the week. Harry Cohen, my colleague, had come up and fashioned this agreement. I've always been against, panhandling in terms of what we can do on an ordinance-wise, but we made a decision to compromise and try and get something done. I think that it's been a fairly successful thing that's happened. Also, I think that the economy was very, very bad when we first took office. It's looking much better now. Our economy in the city is booming. We actually, in the state of Florida, we are the driver of the state economy right now. We have created more jobs. We have more people moving down here in order to work than any other part of the state.
Great.
Yeah.
You know, when you talk about the budgets in particular, there is a lag time though, right?
Sure.
So even though things are looking great, the stock market's booming, you've got a year or two of lag time before those property values and things like that go up, correct?
Well, I'll give you a great example of what happened 2 years ago. The economy was doing well. One of the drivers of how much money was coming into the budget was primarily through our convention center. We were doing terrific business with the convention center. 2012 arrives, and what happens is sequestration starts. And because of sequestration, we lost a lot of convention business because much of our convention business is related to government contractors who do business with MacDill Air Force Base.
Oh, yes.
So there was a direct correlation between how much money we were able to make from the convention center side, which was running in the black at the time, to sequestration, which made us run a minor amount in the red. Our budget has been fairly good the last 2 years. And luckily, we have not had to dip this past year into our budget reserves to help run the government.
It's interesting you talk about people coming in town for conventions. Mm-hmm. How did the Republican National Convention actually affect us? Was there a positive gain to that? I heard some small business people saying, I'm not so sure.
Sure.
But then others saying, hey, I got business.
Well, in terms of individual contractors and vendors, I think that everyone else has to speak for themselves on that. I know that for us as an economy, the number of people that saw us on screen helped us immensely. I think that the publicity alone is something that we couldn't buy on our own. Secondly, I think that what really happened with us is that we had a huge amount of dollars that were raised in order to have it. Ken Melman and the group that held up the 2012 convention, they then gave back to several different charities over the course of, I think it was 6 months ago. They gave out somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 million in charitable donations, maybe more. specifically towards those charities that were here in Tampa Bay because they raised so much money to provide a really well-run and well-received convention.
Let's drop back to your original statement concerning the homeless. I think everybody is a little concerned. There's been a lot online lately about something should be done with the homeless.
Sure.
Especially those that are mentally challenged.
Sure.
But there's Supreme Court rulings that won't let people do anything about that without due course.
Of course, yeah.
So what do we do with the homeless in downtown Tampa? And the nation's got a problem.
Well, you hit the nail on the head in terms of what we are limited to do in terms of legal issues. A great example, we have right now a large number of people that congregate in the downtown area, primarily the north downtown area. If we move them along, because some people think that we just go ahead and say, okay, we're getting them out of here, we're going to give them a bus ticket out of here. It's illegal, we can't do that. There are some people that think that we do that, we don't do that. But if we move someone along, we have to have a place where they will have their possessions. And a lot of times we don't have that, so we try and provide some aspect of that. Secondly, the biggest thing is, the homeless part of it, not the feeding of hungry people. For the most part, if you are homeless in the Tampa Bay area, there are places where you can get 3 meals a day. Almost every homeless advocate I've ever talked to says that food is not an issue. Where people stay is the biggest issue. That's why I know some of my colleagues have worked with the county, because the county is the repository of all social service agencies.
We're going into what for us is cold weather.
Absolutely. And the county has tried to do a good job of finding more housing for folks that are doing, but it's on a very small basis, and it's very difficult to find the dollars in order to provide that.
There was one, I believe it was Minneapolis, where they built these small, what I'd call sheds in a village.
Right.
But there was very sketchy because it didn't say how they were insulated, how they were heated,
Sure.
What kind of security protection there was on the village, what responsibility one had to clean up their mess if they made one.
Sure.
What power does the government have to make people clean up their mess if they make up one?
Well, I mean, there's littering laws that we've had on the books for many, many years, but like, as an example, some cities, Portland's another great example, they have a place outside of the city limits or near the city limits that deals with homeless. The problem that you have more than anything else is once you give a section or place, now you are essentially ceding and saying, yes, you can stay here. In our parks, you're not allowed to sleep in the parks, and we make sure we enforce that intensely because we don't want it to be a gathering place just for the lifestyle of someone who may have some drug and alcohol issues, maybe some mental issues, because then it takes away those rights of people that want to enjoy with their families parks for their own recreation.
Not only that, but you establish what amounts to a ghetto.
Absolutely, and there are advocates out there saying, well, the parks are for everyone. That is true, but it is not an avenue for someone to live, and we don't want people living outside for lots of different reasons. It's not good for them, it's not good for the city, it's not good for the other residents of the city. And what we have found is we have an officer that all he does is homeless issues, and he's told me that he can go out on any given night and see 10 people out there, primarily men. 3 of them he'll get, and they'll be able to get some help that evening. 3 of them will say that they don't need a place to live. They already have a place to live, however, whatever their circumstances. Right. And the other 3 will always say, I'm sorry, I don't want to do it. I'm not going to do it. I don't want to be involved with being in a place where there's lots of other people. Now, those third is really the biggest problem, the most chronic homeless people. You will never get them off the streets from what I understand. And so our key is really to get those first third of people that need to help. Those are the ones that they're going to accept it. They're going to be in a place where they know that they can get some help, and then they can get themselves out of poverty, hopefully. Those are the folks that you really have to target.
What about, you said food.
Mm-hmm.
Is it, and it's in some cities, and there's big cases going on
Sure,
right now,
sure.
where people who really care are going out and trying to feed the homeless in parks and on the streets.
Right.
Is there any ordinances on that in the city of Tampa?
Well, I mean, we do have a rule that doesn't allow that.
I'm not asking you to be a guardhouse lawyer.
No. Well, I will tell you this. I mean, we have tried to discourage those groups that want to feed to not feed. And here's the reason why. It isn't about trying to be cruel to people. But your mission, whether it's through religion or through your own altruism, doesn't actually mean that you're helping anyone. You're just feeding someone. And I know that sounds a little bit strange, but the help necessary is a roof over their head. And if people in the private sector or in the nonprofit sector said, you know what, we're going to build 100 apartments for people who are chronically homeless, that's a bigger issue and a better solution than feeding someone on the streets. Those organizations that feed them now, the Homeless Coalition that actually measures and tries to find out what's going on with homeless people, they have all said, there is no problem with food. They are able to feed as many people as possible, and they usually have enough left over.
You know, it's interesting that you say this, because years ago I had a lady from the Audubon Society on, and we were talking about, I said, I fed the birds.
Right.
And she said, quit it. And I said, but they love it. They come. She says, yes, and 2 and 3 and 4 generations of birds will come to eat from your trough.
Right. Right.
But what happens if you die?
Yeah.
Or you're not there anymore? They've not learned to go out and look for food, not learned to earn it or work for it. And it's the same way we find with our herons on our lake. I mean, my God, if you start feeding them, you might as well bring them in the house. And in fact, they'll come in if you leave the door open.
That's for sure.
So just giving them food without any kind of responsibility, I'm not really that excited about.
Well, and not only in terms of responsibility, but in terms of the help that they actually need. If you are chronically homeless, chances are you're either bipolar, you have some other kind of emotional or mental illness. There may be another a disease, whether it's alcoholism or drug abuse. Feeding you doesn't mean that we're, you know, and that's of course a humane thing to do, but it doesn't get to the root of the problem. Getting to the root of the problem is always the hardest thing. And sometimes I think that people don't understand that government doesn't always solve problems as well when it comes to social issues, especially when it comes to people who don't want help.
How true.
You know, it's much more difficult to try and get that thing solved. So,
out in Waimama, there's a really neat ministries out there. And in order to get help from them, you have to go to class.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
They have some 30-minute, in fact, if they hear this, let me know, because there's surely something I can teach for 30 minutes out there to make a difference, and I'd like to do it. But I think that
maybe they can teach you Spanish, and you can teach someone how to speak in front of groups.
I do want to learn Spanish. There's no question about it.
Yeah, you're talking about Bill. He's the minister down there.
But you go to class, they give you a chit to go into the store and buy something.
I've been down there. I've actually invited him to council. He spoke about his good works. I think it's a great example, and I think it's something that will be and continue to be successful. I know that when I was incredibly impressed by what they were doing down there.
Well, I just read an article on it in the newspaper. They didn't give a contact number.
Well, you should go down there if you get a chance.
If you have that contact number, I'll give your office a call and get it from you.
I will definitely send it to you.
Like to talk to them.
Absolutely. Go down there and see them.
One other thing about the homeless before we leave them,
Sure.
And I really appreciate the city of Tampa not letting them run out in the middle of traffic, wiping windshields or with bottles of water or whatever.
Right.
I always felt uncomfortable, because what if I hit one of them? I mean, you say it's not your fault, and you can say all kinds of things, but I know I'd feel horrible.
Absolutely. And
my insurance company and the legal mess I'd be in. So I think that you did a good thing there.
Yeah, well, you know, that's something that we've been trying to enforce. It doesn't always happen that we get the kind of enforcement we need, but you know, we do want to make sure that people have a legal right to say what they're going to say. They can be on the corner. You don't have to be in the median. Okay, that's the problem. Once you start getting in the median, that's when you start breaking the ordinance. And I try to explain it to people. If you have a sign, you say you're homeless and you're on the side of the road, that's not a problem.
Pull off and do something fine.
Yeah, that's fine. But if you're in the median, you're not supposed to be doing that. And we have it limited to Sundays now, and that's the only time you can do it in the median.
All right, let's leave the homeless.
Okay.
and talk about it.
Are we going to leave the homeless? Is that what you're saying?
No, no. There appears to be people who will work on that.
Good, good.
And I think that's great, because no one should be homeless in a country like this.
Correct.
That chooses to have a home.
Sure.
It's a big difference. There are those who will not want to ever be in a home.
I agree.
And that's up to them. What I'd like to talk to you about is the city of Tampa and Cuba.
Okay.
I just think we've had a great history of this country of Cuba and the city of Tampa, even the fact that we sent off warriors from here to do that. But there's been a good match. What can we do to strengthen that match and take advantage of what's going to be a huge market sooner or later?
Well, I think that there are several things that need to happen. I would, if people want to see Cuba policy change, the first place to go is the federal government, and talk to the U.S. senators and the congressional delegation in order to have them change that policy. I'm of the belief, and I have always been of the belief, that us as the city of Tampa should not get involved in what is essentially an international issue. There's only so much that we can do at the city side. Having said that, the city does have a deep history with Cuba. Jose Marti created the Cuban Revolution. And let me explain this. It's the second Cuban Revolution back in the 1890s. There was a first Cuban Revolution in the 1870s.
Not the 1958 one.
No, not the 1958 one. And he launched launched it from here. And in fact, there is a portion of city land that is actually owned by Cuba. And you can visit in Ybor City. There's a statue of Jose Marti. That is Cuban land.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it is owned by the country of Cuba. That's been there for probably 80 years or more. It was the home of the woman that Marti used to stay with. There was a boarding house there. And she was known as someone that was sympathetic to the Cuban revolutionaries. He stayed in that home when he came to Tampa. And Tampa was important because the number of cigar workers that were here, he would get their nickels and dimes and use that for buying guns and for other purposes in order to help the revolution. So Tampa's role in the Cuban Revolution is incredibly important. In addition, the number of people that have family that are still down in Cuba or family that came from Cuba is enormous. The tough thing for us as a city is that, what do you do when the federal government has an embargo and they have a policy? It seems a little bit...
Start screaming states' rights?
Well, here's the thing.
Or cities' rights?
Our Congresswoman Castor, has already said that they should lift the embargo on Cuba. She's the only Congresswoman in the state that has said that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, and in addition to that, the Obama administration is continuing what the second Bush administration had continued, which continued from Clinton and so on and so forth, that the embargo continues. I think that in terms of trade, the city has a lot of places that we need to trade that are already legal. And I don't know if you know this, Bill, but we already are the #1 trading partner with Cuba, primarily for food and other necessities to keep people alive.
No, I wasn't aware of that at all.
Yeah, what's interesting is that the problem that we have with Cuba in terms of trading is that Cuba doesn't have any hard dollars. There's no way for them to get currency to even pay for. I've talked to several companies that had started to do business with Cuba, and they said, we stopped. And I said, well, why'd you stop doing business? Was there a problem with the regulations, everything? They go, well, the regulations were tough, of course, with the federal government, but we were afraid that we weren't going to get paid. And I will say, no matter what your political persuasion is, people do like to get paid. So,
without a doubt.
And so that's really a big, big issue for them. If Cuba loosened up in terms of their regulation, in terms of allowing more entrepreneurial businesses to be started and to be maintained, I think that they'd be better off. I think that they could be more like a China or maybe a Vietnam. But they have very stubborn leaders there. I don't think that that'll change in the foreseeable future. Raul Castro is now the president.
What's his help?
Well, I got to tell you, Fidel Castro's still alive. Raul Castro, who I think is 80 now, is still alive. I don't see that changing for any time in the future. In addition, regardless of either one of them died or both at the same time, the number of people that have been institutionalized in terms of their thinking in relation to the U.S. and what that means, I think it's going to be a long while before it changes. You know, we need a Gorbachev in Cuba in order to change things. You know, we need a, I'm trying to think of the name of the leader that used to be in China that changed the way that they dealt with capitalist societies and how they became more entrepreneurial. Until that happens, it's not going to matter whether or not we lift the embargo. They're not going to be willing partners with us.
Yeah, you make a good point. I've long wondered why, when we lost 50,000 men and women in Vietnam,
right,
and they still have a communist government, that we're now giving them most favored nation status and still picking on an island 90 miles off our shore.
Exactly.
Makes no sense, except for the way you described it. The
Well,
fact that they haven't loosened up. There isn't any entrepreneurial where there is in both Vietnam and China.
Well, and you know, let's think about it. We don't trade a lot with Albania. And if you don't know anything about Albania, it's one of the few Iron Curtain countries that still have a very tough economy and is something that is still, you know, from the top down. I think that, you know, the idea that we'll just trade with anyone is fine, except for one thing. Are they going to trade with us? You know, and we have to make that determination as to whether or not it's good for us. You got to remember this: Cuba doesn't produce a lot of things, and they were propped up by the Soviets for many, many years. They bought their sugar at a very, you know, reasonable price for them. But the world sugar market, I'm not sure they'd be able to compete. You know, so there's a lot of different issues that go on there, and they'd have to make a decision how they're going to run that economy.
You know, I have almost 4,600 friends on Facebook around the world. And I have people in Vietnam that I talk back and forth with.
Right.
I have nobody in Cuba. So obviously that curtain is still there and in place.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
So let's talk about the rest of the city of Tampa. Where are we going?
Well, I think we're going in a great direction.
Are we going to have transit?
Well, you know, as the, you know, I'm the chairman of HART. Yeah, well, you know, I'm the chairman of the bus system, HART, you know, Hillsborough Area Rapid Transit. And, you know, for us, our biggest issue is that we have a very small budget. I mean, we have about an $85 million budget to provide transit for the entire county. Our county is bigger than, I think, about 20 different states. And we don't have enough dollars to have a more robust system. I know that right now, the county, which is the only place that a referendum can come from in order to get more dollars for transit, they're talking about putting a referendum forward. That's been a very tough baby to birth, if I can say that.
Greenlight didn't have a lot of luck over there.
Greenlight did not do very well. Their plan was to have a lot of rail, about 27 miles worth of rail. For us, whether or not we have an extensive rail system or we have a bus rapid transit system, which is something that mimics a rail, but it's not the same kind of, it's not codified as to where the fixed guideway is at, may be the first step for us, but we still need more money. We have about 200 vehicles in our system, and a county our size, we probably should be at about 500 vehicles. That costs a lot of money. It's not going to be simple for us, and we need to find a way of getting more dollars for our system.
I personally don't believe we can continue to pave over America. I mean, into the future, 6 more lanes or 7 more lanes or whatever are still going to be blocked up by accidents, all kinds of different reasons. I don't understand why rail is so hard for these people to understand as something going into the future.
Well, you know what I think, Bill, more than anything else, is that people come down here and their first reaction is that this is so much different than, you know, name a city up north, okay? And then their idea is that, well, you know, I want to be able to go anywhere I want in my car, as opposed to having been in a bus or a train system in Boston or New York or Chicago or Atlanta or any place else. The problem that we have is that that's how big cities develop. If you look at, and you can take a visit down to the trolley barn in Ybor City, where our trolley is at, there is a map of where the trolley used to be. We used to have 53 miles of trolley.
Right.
Okay. If you look at where the trolley went, it's exactly where Tampa developed. There's a reason why. Now, yes, there's a chicken or egg discussion you can have, which is, were there people there before and then it developed, or the other way around? Doesn't matter. it still got people to where they wanted to go. Great story about Ballast Point, which is in the south part of Tampa, just past Gandy Boulevard along the Bayshore area. There was a wealthy lady that had a mansion down there, and she wanted to be able to get into downtown to shop and other things. They built the station there for Ballast Point so that she can then ride the streetcar all the way into downtown Tampa, and then Ballast Point developed after that around that station. And you know, same thing happened with Sulphur Springs and West Tampa and all the other places that it used to reach. And now we don't look at transit as a development tool, when in fact it's one of the most important development tools.
You know, Mike, as I travel up on Interstate 75, it has never been an area where there has been no construction.
Correct.
In the 15 years I've been here.
Right.
They keep adding lanes, especially up around Brandon, up through that area. Add another lane, add another lane. And a lot of that traffic could come off onto some kind of a train system. Boston, we wouldn't even thought of driving downtown. It was like $15
Oh, yeah.
to park down there. No, I'm not paying that kind of money. We rode the transit. Atlanta, I never thought of renting a car in Atlanta. You can go anywhere you want, and then if you get to a place where there isn't a train, there's a bus waiting right there for you.
Well, and not only
Salt Lake City.
And not only that, Bill, I will tell you, it's not just buses and trains, because a great example, Washington, D.C., which is a great transit city. You know, I know you've been there. I went there last year.
Oh, I love Salt Lake.
And Salt Lake is great too. And what they do now, though, instead of just having a bus, you can now rent a zip car for an hour. So if you know that from that train station or that bus station where you're at, you can rent a car for an hour to go another mile and a half up the road, get groceries or whatever else you're going to do, get it back on the train and go home. It's a much easier way of doing it. It's about multimodal. It's about providing for all types of transit, not just one. And the more we think about it that way, the better off we're going to be in the long run.
Well, of course, now we've got bicycles in Tampa.
Absolutely. The bike share is coming out. It should come out this month. I think it's coming out this month. They're very easy to ride. I've ridden them. They're great because you can park them anywhere, and you don't have to worry about taking them to a station. They get picked up because they have a GPS system on there. They get picked up by the people that own the bikes and bring them back. So, you know, and you can't steal them. Once they're locked up, they're locked. And it's a great thing because it runs on a piston and not a chain. So there's no way to kind of break in and actually have the bike. So
yeah, I was watching a movie from London.
Yeah.
And they've got these bikes all over the place.
Oh yeah, it's a great system.
It was so cool. You know, when my guests come on, they have no idea what I'm going to ask them. I don't know ahead of time either many times, but I just key off of what they're talking about. I want to give you a minute to say anything you want to the people who elected you.
Well, Bill, first of all, thank you for having me on again. I really appreciate it. One of the things that you have to know about the city of Tampa and about what we're trying to do is that we're going in the right direction. There's development in downtown Tampa. There is development in the West Shore area and everywhere else, but we're also making sure that we're taking care of our neighborhoods. We're doing a lot of things now that are improving the lives of people all over the city, including our parks and recreation. If you haven't been to our new parks, Waterworks Park, and you know some of the other folks that other parks that we created, please go and join them, Bill, because I think you would enjoy them.
Well, I think I'll give you a call. We'll go on a tour.
Terrific. Anytime.
Mike, thank you for being on the program.
Thanks, Bill. Really appreciate it.
I'm Bill Hodges. Our guest today has been Mike Suarez, Tampa City Council. And Mike, great job. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, Bill.
You're unique, you're special, you're great. Tell you so often because you are, you know. We'll catch you on the next Spotlight on Government. Again, Mike, I'll come down and we'll take that tour.
Terrific. Anytime.